Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, guys, we're back. We've got the most screens that we've ever had before. We have 6 open, so hopefully this thing goes without too much audio hiccup. We've got the guys from Rapid Response. They're 2 FDNY guys. They started an app called Rapid Response, which is kind of like a back-end user for responding. So you see Street View, you see Aerial View, you see running routes, you see hydrants. It's a really cool app. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's definitely worth taking a look at. It's more in major cities than it is in the smaller jurisdictions, and that's what their focus is. So I want to thank Robert Bonneau, a.k.a. Bobby, from Queens. He's sitting in Queens right now, and Ian Gutch for hopping on here. Ian, I'm going to start with you. Just give me the broad overview of what you guys created and how it can be better the service.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron. So I'm a firefighter in Manhattan, and Bobby is a firefighter in Brooklyn. And we both got on about 10 years ago now. And I think both of us were underwhelmed or disappointed with the amount of how technology was being used in the fire service. So we went out and we created this tool. We think that it's sort of the first software that was designed with firefighters in mind, as opposed to chiefs in mind. There's a lot of software out there that's, designed for the command level, and it's given out to firefighters, and it's not really used. So I think that's kind of what inspired us to start Rapid Response.
Did you guys come from a technology background? Like, is that what you did before this, or just 2 firemen decided to start an app?
Yeah, so I actually joined Bobby a little bit later. Bobby started the company. I'll speak for him a little bit. I don't know how the audio is going over there. I was actually lucky enough to early on in my career, the job sent me out to a class at the Naval Postgraduate School, because I had this. There's a program if you have a great idea to improve emergency management or the fire department, you can apply. I was sent out there. And my idea was to create a better common operating picture. And when I came back, Bobby was already working on something. So I reached out to him, and we've been working together ever since. But neither of us ever had an IT background. So it's been a tough hill to climb.
So Bobby, you work for FDNY too, right? And when did you come up with this idea, and how long did it come from concept to implementation?
Maybe we should go to Aaron first. They decided to park a cement truck right in front of me. So, Aaron, why don't you start until this thing leaves?
All right. So, if anybody's listening, we're Bobby's sitting outside of a place called the Coffee Shop in Queens, making friends with some of the locals apparently. So, Ian, I'm gonna revert back to you. Like, what did it come from concept to implementation to growth? Like, what does that look like for starting an app?
Yeah, so it's I think it depends on what kind of app you're trying to start, what the goal is, who the end customer is, what your own experience is in IT and app building. We've been working on this a long time. It's been a long road, probably meddling for about 4 years, and we've had a product for about 2 years. So yeah.
So Bobby came up with the idea.
Yep, Bobby came up with the idea. I sort of had a concurrent, similar type of idea that we're still trying to incorporate into the current app. But it's evolved a long way. You have to learn what the limitations of the different operating systems. If you're not an IT guy, we had an app, then we had to disband that app, start a new one. And it's been a process to get where we are today.
So, Ian, could you kind of explain? So, for my jurisdiction, like we started out with, we originally had ADC map books, and then you had a station level, like turn by turn map book, then like the actual map page where it's a little more detailed. Now we have different apps that we're utilizing. We have the MDT map, some people call it MDC, whatever it is. We also, most of us use a service called Active 911, which the department doesn't pay for. We pay for it on our own. It's a nominal cost, but it's just a good tool to use. How does, just so for some context for some of these folks that might be familiar with like Pulse Point or Active 911 or those types of softwares, what is yours? How is it similar, but more importantly, how is it different than those? Because you said that you saw these products out there kind of like for that command level officer, but not necessarily for the fireman. Is there a way you could just kind of explain to somebody that's listening to this what the differences are?
Yeah, sure. So me and Bobby, obviously, are both coming from a big city perspective, professional department. And I think what distinguishes this software from others is that, we always are at the firehouse, and when a run comes over, we're jumping on the rig. So there's a lot of software out there also that, volunteers might be coming from somewhere else, and they may have additional needs, or so there's some software out there that does other things. The main idea behind our product is you're putting a tablet on the rig, and when a run comes over, you're automatically getting a rich 3D view of the building. So the roof man knows how to get to the roof. The OV man knows how to get to the rear, and you can see fire escapes and, obstacles to laddering the building. Some of the other software out there, it doesn't have, because of, maybe the operating system that it uses, or for different reasons, it is incapable of rendering this, and you would have to manipulate the software or click a bunch of buttons to come close to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So are you guys pulling from like Google Street View, or because I presume you're not manually uploading pictures of all these addresses, obviously. So how does that work? Like, what
Do you have to license it, or?
Yeah, like where do you get that information?
Yeah, so we're using different mapping software that exists, and how we render it, there is a patent on it. Hopefully I can share my screen with you real quick, maybe. And
Sure.
Let's see.
Looks like we're trying to land that thing on the moon right now with all the different things we got here on the command board.
6 firemen in technology, or 5 firemen in technology. What could go wrong?
No, absolutely nothing. While he's pulling that up,
one of the things I like about it, though, is like you can populate the information that you want on these maps, like the hydrants, the closest hydrants, which hydrants are out of service. Because FDNY is different than, say, DCFD, because you guys are in charge of your own hydrants and parking them out of service and whatnot. Whereas we have WSSC, they're supposed to come and mark them out of service, and then put a tag on it, and then notify somebody else, and then notify somebody else, and then eventually it makes it to our board to say, hey, we have this out of service when we go on a box farm at the corner of whatever is out of service. But you guys can immediately populate this and control that in these apps, which I think was pretty cool.
So I'll press play real quick. So this is what a big tablet would look like in the back. And, for those who are only listening, showing what the touchless tool looks like. So the screen is, we restrict our screen. You can only use the app, and you're getting this, rich 3D view that you see here. And the hydrants, you're able to easily tell the serviceability. And I think that it's all about the user interface. You only got 2 minutes from the firehouse to the fire building. And if you are, the chauffeur or pumper operator, you're only taking a quick glance before you start pulling out the door, and you really can't look again. So it has to be information that you're able to digest quickly. And that's what we emphasize.
And everybody's looking for different reasons, right? Like you said, your pumper operator is looking, hydrants, water source, stuff like that. Your firemen are looking for any type of like forcible entry stuff that they can probably, troubleshoot before they get there. Are you having any problems with like? My question is, I know like for my department, we're bordering up against LA City, and you said that you're having some problems with, like bureaucracy, government stuff like that. Pulse point in our department is used to possibly jump fires in neighboring departments and stuff like that. And that's why we got in trouble, and that's why they don't want us using things like that, because we're bordered right up alongside LA City. And if we see a fire that's questionable, obviously we're going to go. And I think that was the issue they had with stuff like that in Pulse Point or Citizen app, things like that, to where maybe it's not the intended use, but guys are using it because they want to go fight fire. Has that come up at all?
No, that hasn't came up for us.
Okay.
Yeah, generally we integrate directly with the dispatch.
Okay.
So if your company is dispatched to the fire, then we'll automatically render it. But as far as the, other things that are going around in neighboring cities or counties, we don't show that. There's only a limited amount of screen and a limited amount of information you can put on that screen. Otherwise, there becomes information overload, and it becomes difficult to to use it properly. So, as I mentioned, and part of your question, it's difficult getting into cities. Aaron mentioned that we do have a free version of the app that tracks fires in Baltimore, in DC, in Philadelphia, and in Boston. And that was sort of an app that we created for exposure. So firefighters could download and drill with or use for after action review. And hopefully, if we get enough downloads, hopefully we can get it in rigs and used how we envision it.
Can we take a step back and just kind of go back, like, what does creating an app look like? Like, what obstacles did you face? Why did you cancel the first one and then open up another one? Are you hiring somebody to do it? Are you doing it in-house? Like, what's the whole process look like?
So I think the process for us, for Bobby, and Bobby started this company before I was joined the team. I think that I'll speak for him here. It's a little difficult, finding a developer unless you have software experience or know where to look. I think our first developers were based in India, and they were very proficient. But communications became an issue. We're talking, the language of firefighting, and they're talking computers, and you're on a time zone difference. It becomes quite challenging. So we had to change a couple of times, because in order to show that rich 3D view, it had to be on an iOS product. And when originally we created an iOS and an Android version. You can't render it on Android, and for the organization to manage two apps at once, when the one that everybody was paying attention to was the iOS version, we decided to sort of, put our time into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one of the things I had was like, I was showing this to my wagon driver, or as you guys call them, engineers, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I would love to have this."
They call them chauffeurs, right? Isn't it?
Chauffeurs, yep.
Tyler's department is engineer.
Yours is engineers, mine's technicians. All right, so
Yeah, ours is technician also.
The guys who drives, they're the ones I showed to him, and he was like, "This is awesome. Tell him to get it for a effing Android, because I would like to use this too." So like, that's one of the things I don't know enough about the app building to have a conversation about it. It's just I thought it was kind of unique that you guys can only be on one app instead of the other. And now, like, this is the reason is that you have to have somebody who can control both apps, and I guess the information has to be integrated into both apps at the same time on different operating systems.
Exactly. And you could do both apps, or you can, the way they are able to do something that's cross-platform, but then you're sacrificing those features that are available on Apple. So then you're losing out on Apple again. So in the end, it was easier to just stick with Apple and that's our main product. And we see it, the bread and butter, as the tablet-based product. Obviously, we do have the mobile version as well.
So how long did it take you from inception to rolling out like a working version of the app? And then secondly, how difficult was it to basically be listed on the App Store? Like, what's that process look like? Like I said before we hopped on, I had another member reach out about starting an app, and I was like, you know what? I have no clue. I don't even know where you start with that. So if you could just brief synopsis of that.
Sure. I think it was the first developers we were using, I think, were based on a referral. Somebody that we had known had used them previously. And the second developer, same. All were good developers. It's just our current developer is a firefighter as well. So not only does he speak the language of apps, but he speaks the language of firefighting. So it syncs perfectly. He's got experience in both fields, and we move at a better pace that way. So as far as getting on the App Store, I think that might be more of a technical question than they design the app, and it needs to meet certain specifications.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So so some of the obstacles I've seen when people are starting apps is like they hire somebody from, say, Fiverr or Upwork or onlinejobs.ph, and the communication is not there. So it sounds like you guys hire somebody who knows how to speak first responder and technical versus somebody overseas who there's a language barrier on top of having to explain like why this can be integrated into usefulness for the fire department. So I do want to highlight one thing is that firefighters tend to be very visual people. Like that's just how we learn. So one of the things I like about this is it shows you street view. It shows you hydrants. It gives you a visual image to highlight and look at, whether it be like if it's an aerial view, I can see, what's the roof access look like? Is there an HVAC unit sitting on top of the roof? Is it a peaked roof, or is it a flat top roof? Is it going to be a rubberized roof, or is it shingle? Or it kind of gives us the visual stem that helps us learn. I like that you can see if there's solar that you have to deal with or not, because I know solar is big over in the liberal economy of California where Tyler is. So like there's certain things that it helps firefighters to have with a learning aspect of it, having the visual portion. So I like that a lot, and I like that you guys can have a street view too, and it's usually an up-to-date street view in the major cities that you guys are trying to go in. It's not like Poughkeepsie, Idaho, where like the last time they had a Google Street View was 2006 at the inception of Google. The first time they drove by, that's the only time they're going to drive by for the next decade. So most of the maps seem to be update when I've been looking at this in the Baltimore and DC region. But some of the obstacles you're having is like DC, you can't populate some of the information that we have, like Pulse Point does. So we talked about that before. Like what integration issues do you have, and how are you overcoming those obstacles?
So I would say sometimes it's getting through to the right people. This free version, we have a great product that tracks all the fires in Baltimore. Probably about 200 firefighters use it. One of them told me, can you make it on Android? I said, we can't. He said, all right, I'm going to buy an iPhone then. I was like, okay. So, people really love it. And you just getting in contact with the right people in the Baltimore City administration is challenging. You do cold calls, emails. We call it pie and fly, where we bring donuts. We try to meet the right people. It could be challenging a little bit. But so how do we overcome that? Is that we've been seeking out partners to who are already in place. Active 911 has a system. They do have a good product. We would integrate with an Active 911 because we're a solution to a problem that they haven't solved. So we do have some of the partnerships.
Then this may be a question I don't know if you can even answer. Is it your intent probably to continue to develop this and get a big, broad subscription base? Or do you think realistically somebody's going to try and roll you guys up and put you under the umbrella of like a active 911? They're going to say, here, Ian, Bobby, here's a check. And now you guys basically are underneath their corporate veil, if you will.
I think that me and Bobby are open to anything. I think the important thing to us, obviously, we want to see this company succeed, but the important thing is that we want to get the tablet on rigs because we really think that it would make a difference in, operating safely. So how that's done is
Are you on all rigs within FDNY, or is it just kind of like a small sample size, or
no. So we're on.
Sample size, I guess wasn't the right word, but you know what I mean. Like, is it on just a small batch of units, or?
Yeah, a small batch of units, but we have there's different things going on in the FDNY. Obviously, we're employees of the FDNY, so there's conflicts of interest. There's much larger bureaucracy than most places, but we've just it's an enormous 10,000, 11,000 firefighter department. But we've just recently gotten on some pretty good departments in South Essex and in Bayonne. About 150 firefighters, I think, each. And we have some other exciting meetings coming up as well. So
are you and Bobby making all the cold calls, or do you have somebody that's trying to basically set appointments for you, or are you the coffee maker, the copier repair guy, everything, like CFO? Like, are you guys doing it all?
Yeah. At the moment, we're doing it all.
Okay.
We do have a couple of salespeople, but me and Bobby do it all. Bobby's also happens to be a CPA and an accountant. So he's got some experience in business, but we're doing the sales, we're doing the installs. We're starting to scale up now. Obviously, I think I mentioned earlier, the product has really been a product for about 2 years, and probably about 99% of our growth has been in the past 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
So we're on good departments and some volunteer departments too. But as we scale up, we're trying to scale the organization as well.
It's funny. So I was sitting at the firehouse, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, a week ago, and there's a letter in the mailbox, and it was from Ian Gutch, and I was like, what the fuck? So I opened it up, and it's rapid response. So I took a screenshot and I texted it to him. I was like, "Oh man, thanks for the love letter, buddy. I appreciate it." So like, that's the problem, is like getting. It's the same thing as marketing for, like, say, real estate, like setting out cold calls or skip tracing or whatever it might be. You just got to get in front of the right people, and sometimes the hardest thing is, especially with the bureaucracy of big cities like Baltimore, DC, New York, LA, wherever it might be, is like, who do you get in front of to make this decision? And like, sometimes it's, as I like to say, it's all about who you know or who you blow. Like, who needs to get a fucking foot rub in order for me to make this happen? And it's like, that's the biggest thing, is like, that's the obstacle, is you don't know who to get in front of. Same thing for real estate. Like, who's the decision maker for these things? Or a lot of businesses that's trying to expand. So like, I don't know how to overcome that. I really don't. I just know that I know that you guys have challenges, but it's like, even if you have the best product, doesn't mean they're always going to implement the best product because you didn't give the right person the foot rub. So I mean, I really don't know. What do you guys think?
I think there's no one magic source for that kind of stuff. It's just a lot of you got to go to the trade shows. You got to probably get into some of the online or in print publications. You got to get to the Chiefs meetings. You got it, because there's no just, hey, go here, you're going to get all the business you want. And I think it's going to just be a lot of uphill kind of battle, trying to like, when I think about slogging through all that bureaucracy, it makes my head hurt. That's why you almost have to like maybe get an in with one of these other products, or like our department's switching over this Motorola P1 CAD. So like, there's all these different people in here all the time. It's like, how can you kind of just be like the add-on to something like that? You just like swoop in when they do it, because they're already having all these meetings and all the decision makers and committees. It's like, how do I insert myself there? Like, I just need to find one person that's involved in that process, befriend them, and kind of like, hey, by the way, my name's Bobby. What's up? So I don't know, man, but that sounds miserable. Like, my hat's off to you for sticking with it. But it kind of just goes to show you, like, you guys have been sitting there sharpening the axe, like you said, for the last 2 years. And just in the last 3 and 4 months is when you start cutting down the trees. So who knows? You might actually start moving pretty quickly now that you actually got a little momentum.
And what's difficult too is sometimes the product messaging could be a little bit tricky because everybody's question is always like, we already have Active 911 or this CAD system. And we're like, okay, but we do something that's a little bit different. We complement them. And it's tricky enough to get in front of the chiefs and the decision makers. But then sometimes some of the chiefs haven't ridden in a fire truck in 20 years. So they might not even understand the point that we're making. You know, if we get in front of a young chief, they'll get it right away. So
Exactly.
you know.
And that's always the hard part too. It's like you have like when we had our MDCs come out with actual like mapping technology and stuff like that. I remember the thing was, well, wait a minute, you need to know your district. I'm not sure if you guys had to do the same thing. We had to draw our district by hand on probation to make sure we knew everything. Every single street had to be accounted for. And like, I agree with you. I think it's awesome technology. It makes things much more efficient, but you probably do have those older chiefs like, why do you need that? You should already know these things. You should already know your district. But I think as people age out and you get more and more younger people in those positions, I think you would have a lot less resistance. And I think it's tough. You see how, like, I was just messing around with the app right now too. And I mean, that's awesome. That'd be cool to have in the rig, pop it up, look at it. Okay, boom, set it down and go to work. And I know, for example, on our department, our patient care report, we had 2 different providers. One paid a lot more money than the other, but the one that did not get picked was created by an LA County fire captain. It was essentially our existing PCR on an iPad, so there wasn't going to be a huge learning curve. It's you take what you used to fill out on paper, and then you fill it out on a form, and then on the back end, all that would get populated the way everybody else needed it. And that, in my opinion, was a much better product, but it did not get chosen because, like we were talking about, didn't know the right people, didn't grease the right wheels. And I agree with Mike. I think if you guys have started to experience that hockey stick growth right now, I'm super interested to see how that goes, because it looks like, okay, you have a big tailwind. You could be hitting that critical time. My question for you is the resistance that you guys have got from all these other departments. Are you guys tweaking based off of the feedback, or is it just that we already have another provider, the conversation's over?
It's very situation dependent. Like I said, I think that me and Bobby are both very confident if we get a meeting in person with a chief, decision makers, that's when we're able to drive it home. And I'm confident that I can get it on rigs. But when it's just phone calls and back and forth, they don't really understand it until they're holding a tablet in hand. But, it depends on the department. Some departments have nothing at all right now. Some departments that go to fires all the time, there's no MDTs on the rig. They have no information at all. So, I think it depends. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't know if there was like some wholesale objections or just like little things that they didn't like. And it sounds like you guys are giving a good presentation. It's just they're not ready to make that move yet. And you guys are obviously honing your pitch right now too. You guys are getting better and better. And that's what I feel like. I think that hockey stick is, you've done it enough times now to where, oh, hey, we understand how to present this product in a much better way than you did a few years ago.
Right.
And then that's always encouraging, because now you've had objections, you've worked on it, and now it seems like you're in a place where they're much more receptive to it. So that was it.
Right.
Years ago, somebody was pitching a piece of equipment to a fire department I was at, and the guy took it and launched this piece of equipment, just yeeted it as far as he could throw it, and it survived him throwing it, I don't know, 50 yards, whatever it was, bouncing around, breaking around. He picked it up and it still worked. And he goes, "That's my sales pitch." He goes, "You've heard everything else I've had, but this is me. This is proving that this thing is fireman proof as much as possible." And I was like, "That's a hell of a sales trick right there." So I was like, what is your pitch, or what's your computer tablet yeeting pitch that is comparable to that? What are you guys telling these departments when you're getting in front of them?
Oh, well, we always come with an instruction card. It's a laminated page front and back, and there's more pictures than there are words, and that's what that's as fireman friendly as you can get. And we tell the whoever we're presenting to, this is it. This is our app, and the beauty is in its simplicity. We don't have to spend a lot of time training. You don't have to pay us to keep coming out and explaining how it works. It's the people who are using it are going to understand right away.
Now, you said something before we hopped on that was pretty interesting, I thought. So I have an MDT MacBook and an iPad in the front seat with me. The iPad I utilize, I have to, touch stuff, maneuver it, whatnot. You said that your app is hands-free. Could you kind of explain how that's possible? Because I'm just trying to visualize how would that work?
Yeah, sure. So the current iPad that you have, when you do have to touch it, what are you moving around and trying to figure out?
Pretty much just kind of maneuvering on something like Active 911, or we're in the process of taking our actual print map books and complex map books and uploading it into the iPad, so you can sit there. Right now I have to scroll through all of them versus just being able to click on it. Mm-hmm. So that's where the actual hand motion has to come from.
Okay, so our iPad it's locked into our app. No matter what screen you're on, if you took the iPad off and you're drilling in the kitchen on an old run, when a new run comes, it automatically drops a beacon on the fire address, shows you where the hydrants are, shows you the rotating 3D view and the street view. So everything that you would have to usually manipulate around, it's already there. Our whole goal has been, how can we make this as user-friendly as possible? And through trial and error of having different apps, we saw the more buttons that you have to push, the less likely firefighters are to use it. So a lot of departments have iPads that they've purchased, and they're sitting in an office somewhere, unused. And, we'd like to put those iPads to work.
Obviously you guys come in with your app, your software, your platform, and do your thing. Does the department itself have the ability, or at the company level, have the ability to go in and provide specific, I know if we're going to 90 Waverly Drive building XX, I know it's got all these different nuances to it. Are they able to upload that information, or is it basically here's the stuff that no changes?
Yeah, so the way we have it, we don't want to layer too much information on there. We see that there's some software out there layers too much on there, and it might be good for a chief if he's getting driven around, but if you are on the back step and you're looking at the screen, it becomes difficult to understand what it is that you're going to, because there's just too much on there. We think that firefighters will learn the most if it's, by keeping it simple.
Shit's simple.
Just showing it the 3D view. A picture's worth 1,000 words. If it's rotating, I guess it's
sure. Whenever it drops, I think you called it a beacon, when it shows you the hydrant, does it populate the distance from the hydrant to the address?
Yes, it does. So if it's on the same street and the hydrant is 100 feet away, it'll show you that. So you're able to guess length. It's 2 lengths away from the fire building. Now that is a feature that you would have to touch to figure out, but you're also able to eyeball it and be able to look at how many addresses. So there are sometimes, when I say the tool is touchless, I mean on a call for a fire, nobody's going to have to touch anything. If there is a little other functionality, you're able to, if you come to a hydrant that's out of service, you could touch it and put it out of service yourself. And that can be instantaneous to all the other units. So everybody citywide that's using the tablet can know that hydrant's out of service. So that we think that's a great feature that really isn't out there. And we use easy coloring, so easy to understand. And the other
Perfect.
feature that you may have to use your hands for is we have an electric vehicle EV rescue app in there. A recent integration we made, that if you get to an EV fire or extrication job, you'll
Yeah.
know how to do it.
Kind of like what Tyler said, obviously this, in my opinion, doesn't replace the need to know your area, and I don't think anybody would argue that it does, right? But where I see, like, obviously, there's obviously a ton of value for your first two, but almost probably more so for, at least from my mind, is your second, third, fourth, fifth do areas where you maybe, yeah, I've ran that building once 4 years ago or something, or like, hey, on a 3 box, we're not due there. And today we are. Like, I'm not familiar with that area. And you kind of there, it allows you to kind of be like, okay, well, hey, I'm the Charlie side engine. Like, it gives you a better picture going into an area that you're not as familiar with as your first do. I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you get relocated or transferred to an area of the city you're unfamiliar with, now you can be a little bit familiar. It's a tool.
Does your app provide any directions, like turn by turn type stuff, or is it merely just for the building? So like once you're there, it doesn't necessarily provide you any routing to get from A to B.
We do some routing from A to B. It's a simplistic highlighted line. The thought process is that you are familiar with your area and you shouldn't need turn by turn.
Yeah.
If we did turn by turn, it would have to kick you out into a different app, and then the tablet starts to become complicated.
Yeah, and a lot of those apps I find, like even on our MDT, like some of the ways it'll route you, it's like, well, you can't go that way. Like that's a gated parking lot, or whatever. So
and it's very difficult to program logic for vehicles that are able to not follow the traffic flow.
Yeah. No, I wasn't thinking that it would reduce the amount of area knowledge you should have or need to know, but I was just trying to kind of see what all this did versus didn't do. That's all.
Mm-hmm. One of the other cool things about this is, like, DC, you guys aren't integrated yet into 100%. So like DC just had a structure fire go out. It didn't populate in this yet just because you guys aren't ingrained yet. But if I plug the same address in this app, then it'll still show me the street view or the aerial view or the running route with the line to follow. So even if you want to look in a city that you're not part of, you can still plug the information in there without it automatically populating on the free one. This isn't the paid for version. This is kind of the one that's your marketing tool. And I think that's kind of cool. But once you guys get one that's ingrained in the system, you can, as it populates, you can just touch the button and it'll go to that address with the street view and aerial. So it's nice to have, even now it's not populating automatically, it's still nice to have that. And then if you want to make one of the screens bigger, this is just for the app. If you want to make one of the screens bigger, you can just highlight and increase the size of, say, the map with all the hydrants on it. And then you can zoom in and zoom out as needed to see where they all are. But you guys are in charge of, like FDNY, you guys are in charge of putting your own hydrants out of service, right?
Yes. But that's it. Just recently, that process has went digital, but it hasn't been the most user-friendly system, and sometimes I think people have trouble with the system that is in place, and I'm not sure if anyone's checking sometimes. I've had a hydrant that's been out of service for 5 years. So,
Good old government. We'll get to it when we get to it. Not that important for them, right?
That's right.
So, Bobby, do you want to talk today? Are you getting surrounded by people in Queens? Are they asking for your autograph? Like, are you able to talk? Is it too loud?
Yeah, no, I could talk. The autographs have slowed down a little bit.
So I know you just finished the install. What does the install look like for what you guys are doing?
Got it. So today we were doing a little bit more of a white glove service. So our bread and butter is the software, the subscriptions. We make it nice and easy where if we used one of the departments we just closed, Bayonne Fire Department, they already had iPads. They didn't really have a great solution for on-rig support. So they purchased X amount of licenses, and their rigs, their members, they were in charge of outfitting their rigs in terms of hardware. If they need hardware, or and by hardware we mean iPads or mounting equipment, we do source this stuff at a large volume, so we end up getting wholesale discounts. So we try to pass that discount on to departments if they need it. But a lot of departments have found ways to, through grants.
Lost you, Bobby.
You guys still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. What about now? You guys still? Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got
you.
you.
Okay. So, sorry about that. The call just came in and completely threw off my train of thought. So a lot of it is it's just software sales, right? Subscriptions. They buy the licenses and they can hit the ground running. For someone like today, we were doing a little bit more of a white glove service where we actually came on site and installed for this company, right? Which is we use RAM mount equipment. Same thing that most police departments use. You're not putting a screw in the rig. It's completely compliant with manufacturer's warranties, all the red tape that chiefs are primarily concerned with. It's compliant with all of those. So we can get on site. We make sure that the iPads are completely hooked into their dispatch. That's usually done prior to an install where we work the integration, we test the integration, we stress test it, make sure that the runs are coming in smooth and they're coming in accurate. And then we come on site, we basically mount using the RAM mounts, get the iPad situated to the boss, the chauffeur, or the rear cab's liking. And after that, maybe one training. But as Ian said, this stuff is it's the KISS principle. We keep it very simple. So members with that little picture info card that Ian made, it's pretty self-explanatory. We rarely have to even come back and do an additional training because then it's just that each one teach one principle.
So, Bob, let me ask you another question, and this is from Tyler Emmy. So, are you educating these departments on the grants, and are you getting in front of them in conferences like FDIC or the other hundreds of conferences that are out there?
Yeah, so we recently onboarded a woman who does grant writing, and she's been an eye-opening experience because of I thought I knew a bit about it, and I'm still learning so much. So now that we have more of an authority on that source, if someone says, "Hey, funding's going to be an issue," then we can basically just pass them off to. If that's the thing that's holding them back, she's pretty good about finding them the cash. Whether she's giving guidance to their grant writers, depending on the size of the department, because some people outsource it to a third party. So whether she's just giving them guidance or the departments know how to get it done themselves, or they have an internal guy that she can help assist, or she could just help them and take control of the process altogether. So there's a few different outlets that we're exploring in terms of executing on these grants, and each state is different as well. So it's just in case it wasn't complicated enough, right?
We got somebody who does the fitness for DC that we send out. I know FDNY. You guys have your own like boot camp of guys that go down there. I worked with them before, and they're great. We started subbing out some of the work to this company, and the way they sold it to us was they found the grants, they found us the money, they showed us how to basically hire them using the grant money, and then now they're integrated into the system, get their foot in the door by getting the grant money for us to hire them with it. So I thought it was a kind of a unique strategy that you don't see a whole lot outside of government contracts, but it's definitely one that you can utilize. I mean, this isn't just for obviously for your app, but also for like say fitness in the fire department. So I think that's great. You guys actually got ingrained in that because I think it's going to be a tremendous tool down the road. Now, how about conferences? What do conferences look like for you guys?
So conferences can be a little tough sometimes because, again, it's difficult to meet the right people. Sometimes you do meet chiefs and they are very interested, but maybe they're from a smaller rural department that has less of a budget that has less mapping because the area is perhaps, I don't want to say less significant, but it's off the beaten path compared to the metropolitan areas that where the mapping is so good, and maybe they're going on less runs as well. So the integration is relatively similar to no matter what the department size is. Obviously, if we have a big city, we will have to parse out more units, but integrating with the API or the existing CAD will be similar. So sometimes the juice may not be worth the squeeze, or it may be difficult to follow up with departments that are further away and in a state that we can't necessarily come in person and help them out. But if it's a larger department, it becomes easier.
Sure. Well, and you got to know what your product's going to be best suited for from a business perspective. You only have a finite amount of install time, product time. You want to be in the places that's going to basically financially make sense for you. If you're just, it's a single department with 2 stations in the middle of Oklahoma, it's probably not a great fit,
Exactly. And that's something that we understand, but once you build that the product, you don't want to be, you want to get it on some rigs, so you can't be too selective in the beginning.
Sure.
You understand that maybe it's not the best fit for that department, maybe it's not the best fit for rapid response go, but you got to get it on some rigs and prove that it could help firefighters. So hopefully we're getting some departments that we know are a better fit mutually, and that is definitely proven the proof of concept, and now other departments in that area want to grab the product as well.
What's interesting is, and Ian touched on it, you guys touched on it before, is you don't know what you don't know. So when you say, well, what's the best marketing strategy? The best thing to do is just document everything, right? Because you just try everything and you see what works. And to Ian's point, that's even what we're doing now is, okay, so me and Ian are full-time FDNY firefighters. We only know one type of firefighting. We know urban. So could you even add value in a rural setting? Well, there's only one way to find out, right? So then we just did an install at PA Fire Department, and we're talking to the chief, getting feedback from him, and he goes, I think you might have built a tool that's better for rural than it is for you guys. Now, while I didn't agree, I said, well, why do you, what ground do you stand on by saying that? He says, well, how long are you on the rig? I don't know. Maybe like Ian said, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. National average is 4.5 minutes. He goes, where we are, 6 minutes. We're on the rig 6 minutes. So my members had nothing to look at, twiddling their thumbs for 6 minutes. Now they can digest everything. We have longer response times, which means we can really capitalize on the information, which is true, because even as an end user, and I love this product, but if the fire's down the block, right, we're going to be there in a second anyway. So it's very interesting when you start deploying in different areas, full-time versus volunteer versus combo, and you get that feedback and you find out if you're adding value. It's very interesting, and we let that feedback kind of steer the product, and a lot of it, we didn't know. We're kind of learning as we go.
It's funny. I have a buddy of mine I work with. He's from Soldotna, Alaska, and I was talking to him about the same thing, like, what's your run time look like? And he's like, dude, my commute time to the hospital is like an hour and a half, 2 hours, getting from point A in Alaska to point B. I was like, God damn, fuck, getting hurt in Alaska.
Yeah. You got to take a snowmobile and a boat to get there. But
tie that tourniquet tight.
Yeah. And I mean, so that is good, Bobby. Like what you said is like you took the chief's feedback because you're looking at it from one lens, he's looking at it from a different. And from a business perspective, like you probably don't want to pigeonhole yourself just to big metro departments, right? Not that there isn't a ton of them, especially if you start working on that like 100 to 3,000 people type city. That's probably like the real nice kind of some bureaucracy, but you can still get in there with a couple phone calls, not New York City or DC, where it's just like, you might as well just lay down in traffic, right? But, and if you only focus on like the all career departments, like you're going to limit the amount of departments, obviously. Now, granted, it would probably take a long time to get through them all. But if you have a product that's applicable to, like, I work in a combination system. So it's like mostly career, but we are augmented by volunteers. And depending on where you're at within the county, like it could be mostly volunteer. So like, but I'll say like a lot of times the volunteers have more, I don't want to call it disposable income, but more deployable income than some of the city or county governments. So, from a business perspective, you kind of want to get into those departments too. Like where Aaron and I live down around DC, damn near everything that's around DC is a combination department. And some of them have, like, PG's got what, 1 million people living there? I mean, it's not like some cow tipping hucklebuck bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
So my wife is saying that we're gonna have a pancake dinner so we can raise money for the rapid response.
It's easier when a volunteer department may have, maybe it's one volunteer department, but they have 7 rigs. Well, perfect. We can get on 7 rigs, as opposed to a volunteer department that only has 1 rig. The integration time there is the same. We are serving volunteer departments now, and helping out a lot. But yeah, that's kind of.
So would that be 7 separate licenses? Like, I know you guys probably don't want to date your pricing or anything, but like, what does that ballpark look like if Chief so-and-so's listening to this right now? He's like, shit, that sounds pretty good. I have 7 rigs. Can you kind of ballpark what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So depending on the size of the package of licenses, each iPad or cell phone download counts as a license. And then it costs, depending on how many are ordered, it would cost either $10 or to $15 per license. So that's just for the software. There's an integration fee up front, which I think is pretty standard. It depends on, how many units, again, we have to parse out, as far as, to each individual company, right? If you're riding in the engine, we only want you to get the engine's runs and so forth. So the integration fee could vary, but generally the software is per license, $10 to $15.
Okay.
For the sake of clarity, it should be mentioned that this tool, and I've listened to other episodes of your show, the viewers need to understand that this is the most used tool that's ever been on your show. It's the most used tool that I've ever seen in my career. And I'm not saying it's the best tool, because I think there's a lot of great tools out there. But if you think for a second, you don't even need some of these departments. Like, yeah, but we don't go to that much fire. No departments, not my company. None of us feel that we go to enough fire. But if you let go of fires and you look at run load, we have certain volunteer departments, and I see the runs coming in. They're going on a ton of runs. Whether it's gas emergencies, motor vehicle accidents, they're going on a ton of runs. And our tool is used. Wow, sorry about that. Our tool is used for every run. It gets looked at every screen. We make everything actionable. Maybe Ian could unpack the EV rescue portion, because it's just another example of the way now that this screen is on the rig, it's getting looked at every run. How do you skate to where the puck is going? More and more electric vehicles are on the road, and this company created a great app, but it lived on people's phones. Most of our phones are back at the firehouse. So we needed to make their tool actionable. We needed to make their information actionable, and that's what we've done. So I just wanted to make it clear. Some people think, well, I don't go to enough fire. Maybe it doesn't warrant this tool. But a lot of these departments go on a ton of runs, and this thing adds value on every run. And that's it. Aside from the financials having to make sense, that's the way Ian and I try and do our litmus test. Is Are we going to add value here? Are we going to add value to this system, for this department? You know, and it's true that it is not always the case. But for most departments, if we can be there and we can add value, we're going to try to.
I like how he has to take a break every time there's like somebody skateboarding or backing up or one of
It's a
the
joke. Yeah,
autographs.
it's a joke. Right when I talk again, this truck's going to go in reverse, and so we're playing a little game here.
So let me ask you guys a question. So a lot of apps are paid for apps. Like, have you ever thought about making it like if I want to do a one off and I want to download your app for $6.99 or $10.99 or whatever it is to have usefulness of it down the road? Like, have you guys thought about doing something like that?
Of monetizing the what's currently the free version?
Yeah, or advancing it, either one.
We've considered it. Like we're still looking to get those numbers up in some of those select departments. You know, we want to take it to the chiefs and say, hey, everybody's using this right now. Let's really get this on rigs, the professional version. So we're going to keep going down that track a little bit longer. And you know, who knows where it goes from here, whether or not, you know, do something like that. And we also, no, stop there.
So I mean, let's as we wrap this thing up, like what's next for you guys? Are you going to keep doing the same thing? Keep like chipping away at the granite? Like what's the plan from here on out?
We're going to keep chipping away. We're trying to scale up the personnel in the company, bring on some more salespeople. We're going to continue to target select areas where people have already been the, you know, first movers in purchasing a product that's going to make operations safer in that area. And we're going to continue that way. And we're always looking for new integrations to work with other companies, you know, to put it in more people's hands. So that's sort of the plan.
Bob, you got anything you want to add on to that as we start wrapping this thing up? What's next, or what you guys want to portray, or a story you want to tell?
I think Ian did a great job. I mean, I think there's something to be said about organic growth, and I think that we are open to the exponential growth. But I've made so many mistakes with this company already. You ask Ian, I've messed up almost everything with this thing. So it's now one of the mistakes I've made is, you know, you want to grow and you know you need to bring on people, but then, you know, I've made the mistake of bringing on a bad player, and it disrupts the whole operation and it kills things. So we are focused on bringing on new people, but we always make sure that they have that shared mindset. Yeah, it's great if they can bring a different skill set, but we want to always make sure that that common denominator exists, that they are here for the right reason. They understand what the vision is, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a firefighter, but if you're working with this company, you got to understand how your role affects these life and death situations. You know, it's what motivates me and Ian to do this every day. You know, God knows it's not the money. So it's just, I think he said it very well. You know, we're open to what's next, but we're calculated in the decisions as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty good, you know, spring and summer going forward with the leads that we have, and we're excited about that. They're all in the sweet zone for us as far as department size and you know, professional metropolitan areas. And so I think it's going to be good. And hey, I want to point out too. I want to let you know, Bobby, I want to tell him about Humble Heroes real quick before we jump off the phone here. Bobby runs a great charity as well. Bobby, can you?
Yeah, this guy is parked right now, so he'll probably throw it in reverse in a second. But yeah, Humble Heroes of FDNY is an FDNY charity. It's a 501c3, and it's basically run by volunteers. We dress up as superheroes, and we visit pediatric burn centers and cancer centers around the country to lift the spirits of sick kids. We also do some fundraising because we give gifts out to all the hospitals and all the ICUs that we visit. So it's something we've been doing for the past 8 years now, and it's just grown exponentially. And we really we go to St. Jude's in Memphis. We have visits in Florida, PA. It's just one of the things I'm most proud of I've ever done.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I thought it was important. I know we were talking business, but I thought it was important to get in there at the end. They could
Yeah.
take a lot of great hospitals and make, a lot of kids happy. So
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate that.
All right, guys, as we wrap this thing up, I just want to say thank you to both of you, not for only what you do as FDNY guys. You guys are superheroes, apparently. And
Dress up as it.
Bob.
I'm always in a costume. That's it.
No, but seriously, thanks for putting this app out there, trying to make the fire department's jobs easier. I'm hoping that you guys take off. I think that's a great tool to have. I don't have anything else. Just a big thank you to you guys. Tyler, Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, just thanks for hopping on. This has been pretty interesting from not just a host, but from like an audience perspective for me. But yeah, I would encourage you to post it in the Facebook group. Hopefully there's a thread somebody in that group can start to pull for you for their department and hopefully get you on their rigs. But just thank you for what you're doing. And, I'm going to take a look at this Humble Heroes site. That's super cool. Appreciate it. And thanks for sharing a couple minutes of your day with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'll echo Mike's sentiments too. I would check it out in the group. There's a couple guys that I'm thinking of that do training all across the country. Maybe there's some good stuff that you guys can kind of brainstorm together. And I just should check out the Humble Heroes _NY, right? That's your guys' Instagram. Cool. So I'll make sure I link that in the show notes. I love that kind of stuff. So thank you for doing that as well. And yeah, this is cool. I love geeking out on stuff like this. So thanks a lot. And if we can be of service, let us know too.
Thank you very much, guys. And if you download the app and you have any suggestions for us, please let us know.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having us on.